Topic Nixal. The moment an avoidant realizes you're too strong, watch what happens. What if I told you the very moment you stop chasing love is the moment they start to panic? Hey, it's Jim Rohn, and today we're going to unravel one of the most underrated emotional power shifts in relationships, the exact moment an avoidant partner realizes they can't control you anymore. Not with distance, not with silence, not with mixed signals. If you've ever been in a relationship where you gave more, tried harder, stayed longer, while they pulled away, shut down or disappeared just when things felt close, you're not imagining it. You're stuck in an attachment dance. And here's the kicker. The stronger you become, the more it disrupts their emotional defense system. You see, avoidant types survive by staying in control of closeness. They don't fear love, they fear losing themselves in it. But what happens when you stop needing validation, stop walking on eggshells and start standing in your full emotional power? That's the moment everything shifts. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact psychological process avoidant partners go through when they realize they can't manipulate your attention anymore. You'll learn what their silence really means, why your strength triggers them, and what to do when the game flips. But fair warning, this might hit deep, because once you truly see this pattern, you can't unsee it. And from that point on, you'll never again confuse emotional distance with your worth. If you're ready to stop blaming yourself, if you're done trying to earn love that should be mutual, and if you're ready to embody the kind of strength that makes avoidance impossible to ignore, stay with me to the end. This might be the most important turning point in your relationship life. And hey, if you're on a journey of emotional growth and you're done settling for one-sided connections, make sure to subscribe. We talk about the real stuff here. Attachment power boundaries, healing. Let's grow stronger together. Let's break this down simply. Avoidant attachment isn't about being a bad person or not caring. It's not even about not wanting love. It's about fear, deep structural fear that lives in the body. Fear of being engulfed. Fear of being controlled, fear of losing the self in someone else's emotional needs. So what do avoidant types do when relationships start to feel too close? They back away, not because they don't feel something, but because feeling too much too quickly threatens their entire emotional survival strategy. When someone with avoidant tendencies starts to catch real feelings, their brain doesn't say, "Wow, this feels amazing." It says, "This could destroy you." That's important to understand. Every time things begin to deepen, when you become more open, ask for more consistency, or express vulnerable emotions, they perceive it as pressure. And pressure activates their core programming: retreat, withdraw, self-isolate. Not because they're trying to hurt you, but because closeness to them feels like a loss of control. And control for them equals safety. That's why avoidants ignore messages. It's why they go quiet after intimacy. It's why they claim they need space out of nowhere right when things were getting good. They aren't reacting to you. They're reacting to the weight of what connection represents. Exposure, responsibility, the chance they might fail someone or be failed again. And for many, that comes from early experiences where closeness wasn't safe, where love came with conditions or emotional chaos. So they learned to self-soothe alone. They became fiercely independent because they had to be. But independence isn't the problem. It's the way they use it as armor. When avoidants say, "I don't need anyone," they mean, "Depending on people has never felt safe for me." And when you bring them stable, grounded emotional energy, when you don't chase, don't beg, don't play their distancing game, it throws off their entire system. Why? Because you're not responding the way they expect. You're not feeding their narrative that love equals pressure. You're not collapsing into neediness when they pull away. You're still standing. And here's the twist. That moment when you hold your center instead of spiraling, that's when they realize they can't control you emotionally. And for the avoidant person, that's a big deal. Their strategies, ghosting, withholding hot and cold behavior, they stop working. You become unpredictable, not in a chaotic way, but in a grounded way. You've stepped out of the dynamic. You're not playing their emotional chess game anymore. And that can cause panic. Avoidants don't know what to do with someone they can't emotionally destabilize. When their withdrawal no longer makes you chase, when their silence no longer keeps you hooked, they're forced to face themselves. And let's be honest, that's terrifying, because it means the person they're trying to push away isn't the problem. The real discomfort is inside them. The fear of intimacy, the need for control, the old wounds that have gone unaddressed for years. That's the power of emotional strength. It doesn't yell, it doesn't demand, it doesn't threaten. It just stands calmly in the truth, I deserve to be met. And I won't shrink to stay connected. And when an avoidant realizes that you're too strong to control or chase, it shakes their world. Let's talk about what happens when you stop bending, when you stop chasing, stop over-explaining, and start standing still, emotionally grounded, clear and calm. That's emotional strength. And for someone with avoidant attachment, it's disarming. Not because you're doing anything wrong, quite the opposite. You're doing what every human being should do in a relationship. You're showing up with presence and honesty. You're saying, I'm here, I want connection, but I'm not going to abandon myself to get it. That kind of presence doesn't demand, it doesn't push, but it does reveal. And that's where things get interesting. Emotional strength. Real strength isn't loud or forceful. It's steady. It's the kind of strength that doesn't panic when someone pulls away. It doesn't go into overdrive trying to fix things. It doesn't turn cold or vengeful. It just says, I'm available for a real relationship, not for emotional hide and seek. That quiet clarity, that refusal to chase or collapse, acts like a mirror. And what it reflects back to the avoidant partner is something they've spent years trying not to look at: their fear, their unresolved wounds, their deeply held belief that closeness equals pain. So when you show up and stay steady, when you stop reacting and start observing, suddenly their tactics stop working. Ignoring you doesn't make you panic. Pulling away doesn't make you beg. You don't go away and you don't chase. You just are. That's powerful, because it disrupts the emotional logic they've lived by for a long time. The idea that they can keep people at a safe distance and still feel in control. That if someone wants them enough, that person will bend, twist, and contort just to stay close. But you don't. You stay upright. And here's what that does. It triggers a crisis. Not because you're causing harm, but because you're shining light into the corners they've kept hidden. If closeness isn't dangerous, if emotional availability isn't weakness, if vulnerability doesn't always lead to pain, then everything they've believed about safety and connection starts to fall apart. That's terrifying, because it means their defenses aren't necessary anymore. And when someone's whole sense of emotional survival has been built on staying protected, the idea of taking the armor off feels like standing in front of a storm with nothing but skin. They start to wonder, why isn't this working? Why doesn't this person break the way others did? That internal pressure builds. The emotional avoidance strategies aren't landing, and suddenly they're the one feeling exposed. Not because you expose them, but because their own fear has no place to hide anymore. That's what emotional strength does. It doesn't demand change. It makes denial impossible. So now they're left with a choice: face the fear or run harder, grow or self-sabotage. And often they'll try the second one first. But the moment they realize you can't be manipulated by distance, that you won't beg for scraps of connection, that's when the old rules stop working. That's when the real confrontation begins. Not between you and them, but between them and their own unresolved pain. Now here's where it starts to get messy, because when an avoidant starts to feel emotionally cornered, even by something as gentle and consistent as your strength, their internal world lights up with alarms. This isn't about you doing something wrong. This is about their nervous system perceiving closeness as danger. Emotional intimacy feels like a threat, not because it is, but because somewhere along the way they learned that to be close meant to be vulnerable, and to be vulnerable meant to be unsafe. Maybe they grew up in a home where emotional needs weren't met, or they were punished for expressing them. Maybe love felt conditional or unpredictable or absent altogether. Whatever the case, their body remembers. So now, even in adulthood, even in a relationship with someone who's steady and kind, their instinct is to retreat. And here's the strange part, they might not even know why they're pulling away. It can be unconscious. The very thing they want, connection, love, belonging, starts to feel like too much, too exposing, too risky. So they start to feel overwhelmed. They might even twist the story in their mind to justify the discomfort. They'll say things like, I feel smothered, or I'm losing myself, or this is too intense. But what they're really feeling is fear. Not fear of you, but fear of what connection requires. Openness, consistency, mutual reliance. Now, to someone who's emotionally secure, that sounds completely manageable, healthy even. But for the avoidant, it feels like drowning. Their independence is their oxygen. They've survived by staying self-contained, emotionally self-reliant. So when a relationship invites them into real emotional partnership, when someone gets close enough to see them, they start gasping for air. Not because you're suffocating them, but because they've never practiced breathing in connection. It's foreign, it's disorienting, and it triggers their fight or flight response. That's why so many avoidants retreat at the peak of closeness. Why they go cold after a deep conversation, why they disappear after a romantic weekend. It's not because they didn't enjoy it, it's because their system interprets the emotional intimacy as a threat to their autonomy. So they sabotage, not out of cruelty, but out of emotional overload. They'll pick fights, they'll start doubting the relationship, they'll convince themselves that you're the problem, because pushing you away is the only way they know to feel safe again. This is heartbreaking to watch when you care about them. You might think, but I'm not asking for that much, I'm just trying to connect. And you're right. You're not asking for anything unreasonable. But to them, even healthy closeness can feel like too much. That's why your strength is so important. It holds the line. It doesn't collapse just because they retreat. It says, you're allowed to feel afraid, but I'm not going to shrink myself to make your fear comfortable. And that's the critical moment. When you stay calm while they panic. When you don't chase, don't argue, don't try to rescue them. You let them feel their fear. Because only then do they start to see that it's not you they're running from, it's their own emotional ghosts. Here's what you need to hear, and I want you to take this in slowly. You are not the problem. If you've shown up consistently, communicated clearly, loved without manipulation, and they still pulled away, that isn't a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their capacity, or more accurately, their current lack of capacity. And that difference matters. Because the avoidance withdrawal doesn't mean you're too much, too needy, or too intense. It means they don't yet know how to sit in the discomfort of real connection without feeling like they're going to lose themselves. That's their work, not yours to fix. This is where your emotional boundaries become critical. Because the moment you start interpreting their distance as your failure, you've already lost yourself. You've stepped into their storm and started trying to manage it for them. That's not love, that's self-abandonment. You'll want to explain to fix, to prove that you're safe, that you're different, that you're worth staying for. But the truth is, the more you chase, the more unsafe it feels to them. Not because you're unsafe, but because your chasing confirms their fear that closeness costs them something. That connection means pressure. So they retreat further, and you end up exhausted, resentful, and doubting yourself. Don't do that. Don't explain your right to be loved well. Don't plead for consistency. Don't try to convince someone who is emotionally unavailable that you're worthy of presence. Because here's the thing, you already are. Your value doesn't rise and fall based on how much someone else is capable of giving, especially not someone stuck in their own fear. You don't need to shrink your needs to preserve a connection. That's not noble. It's a slow erasure of who you are. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be cold or cutthroat. It doesn't mean you shut down. It means you stay rooted in reality. You stay available for connection without abandoning yourself. You can say, I care about you and I'm here, but I need mutual emotional presence. If that's not something you can offer, I won't force it, but I won't keep shrinking either. That's the voice of someone secure, someone who can love and self-protect. Patience is a virtue, but only when it's paired with self-respect. If your patience turns into waiting endlessly for someone to be ready while you go emotionally hungry, that's not strength, that's neglect, and not by them by you toward yourself. A secure partner knows when to offer space, and they also know when to walk away, not out of anger, but out of wisdom. Because connection without emotional availability is like trying to build a house on sand. It may stand for a while, but it can't weather real storms, so hold your ground. Let your steadiness speak for itself. And remember, their fear is not your burden. Your peace is not theirs to test. If they can't meet you at the level of real connection, you're allowed to leave the door open, but you're not required to stand in the doorway forever. Now let's get to the part that's hardest to face, knowing when to stay and when it's time to walk away. This isn't a decision you make lightly, especially when you care deeply, when you've invested your heart, and when you see potential in the other person. But potential is not the same as reality. You can't build a relationship on what someone might become someday. You build it on what they show up as now. And if your needs for connection, for emotional availability, for shared vulnerability are consistently unmet, that's not a minor issue. That's the foundation of the relationship. Without it, everything else is just decoration. You don't need to demonize them to leave. You don't need to wait until things fall apart in some dramatic blow-up. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is look at the reality as it is and say, I love you, but this isn't enough. That takes strength, because you're walking away, not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring more about your peace, your emotional health, and your future. You've tried, you've been patient, you've communicated, but you can't grow a relationship alone, and you can't heal someone by tolerating the very behavior that keeps wounding you. Avoidants don't respond to chasing. They respond, if they ever do, to consistency, to time, to their own internal reckoning. And that journey can't be forced if they choose to do the work that's theirs. But you don't need to stay to prove your love. That's not how healing works. It's not a trade, I'll keep accepting crumbs until you finally wake up and love me back the right way. That's not devotion. That's self-neglect dressed in hope. And it's a trap. So how do you know when it's time to go? Look at the pattern, not just the moment. Is their avoidance a one-time fear? Or is it a chronic refusal to meet you emotionally, no matter how gently or clearly you show up? Do they acknowledge the gap or deny it? Deflect it or blame you for wanting too much? If their withdrawal continues to rob you of clarity, closeness, or basic emotional reciprocity, that's not a relationship. That's a performance you're carrying alone. Leaving doesn't mean you failed. It means you refused to keep betraying yourself in the name of loyalty. It's not a punishment. It's not revenge. It's self-respect. It's looking in the mirror and saying, I will not make myself small to hold on to someone who isn't holding me back. And that's what being secure really means. It means choosing the kind of love that strengthens you, not weakens you. The kind that expands your capacity, not drains it. Yes, you can grieve them. Yes, it will hurt. But freedom is not always comfortable at first. Still, it's better than confusion, better than emotional starvation. You're not meant to beg for intimacy. You're meant to receive it as part of a two-way connection. And if someone can't give you that, you have permission, real moral permission, to let them go. Let's bring this full circle. If you've made it this far, you're likely someone who's experienced the painful confusion that comes from loving someone emotionally unavailable. You've felt the highs of connection and the sudden drops of silence. You've tried harder, explained more, given the benefit of the doubt again and again. And still, they pulled away. But now you see it differently. You understand that avoidant behavior is not about your worth, it's about their fear. Fear of being seen, fear of depending on someone, fear of losing control. And when you meet that fear with emotional strength, when you stop chasing and start holding your ground, it becomes clear who's ready and who isn't. In this video, we've broken down avoidant attachment not to diagnose or shame, but to bring clarity. We explored how avoidants use withdrawal and self-sufficiency as shields. How your emotional strength acts like a mirror, exposing the unresolved fears they try so hard to hide. And, most importantly, we talked about what you can do, how to hold your boundaries, protect your peace, and walk away with dignity when your needs are not met. Here's the heart of it: you deserve mutuality. Not just attention when it's convenient, but presence when it matters. Not hot and cold signals, but someone who meets you consistently and vulnerably. And if someone can't give you that, not because they're evil, but because they're not ready, it's okay to walk away. That's not giving up on love. That's honoring yourself. So thank you for watching. Truly. This conversation isn't always easy, but it's necessary, because emotional self-worth is not optional, it's foundational. And every time you choose to protect your peace, you're rewriting the story. You're saying, I am no longer available for relationships that cost me my wholeness. If this resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. We're building a space for people who want real connection, emotional growth, and honest conversations. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and share your experience. What moment in this video hit home for you? What would you tell someone else in your shoes? Remember this: you don't have to earn what should be given freely. Respect presence, emotional safety. You deserve real connection. If they cannot meet you there, it's not your job to shrink. It's your call to walk. Take care of your heart, stay strong, and keep walking toward love that meets you where you stand.